These resources will be raised. It's going to be a critical moment because all eyes are going to be on John Mbadi. Good morning and thank you for joining us. This is Base Check. It's a special coverage of the budget day here in Kenya and of course the rest of East Africa. And we'll be looking at all the issues, how much will be going where and what will be the impact of this expenditure plan. I mean, you've had it all from all analysts of all colors and stripes, trying to analyze these. And of course, we also saw Parliament, the Budget and Appropriations Committee, also coming up with their own realignment and saying, hey, look, this is all what we need to do here. I'll be unveiling my team of analysts who will be guiding us through this process. And I just want to remind you that we have our team all over town. And of course, in some of your counties, from Mombasa to Kisumu. We also have our teams at Parliament buildings. Of course, they'll be giving us a brief on what is happening there, who is saying what, and who is not saying anything. And of course, we also have another team stationed outside the National Treasury. Oh yeah, it's buzzing with activity. I saw it in the morning. And of course, they'll be joining us to tell us what is exactly happening there. Let's first of all go to the National Treasury because I'm being told that our reporter who is on site there has something to tell us. So let's go to the National Treasury. If we can get to our reporter who is on the ground. My producer, do we have National Treasury? Alan, let's listen here. Hey Alan, hi, good morning and thank you for joining us. I know it's chilly in there.
Thank you very much, O'Brien. A very chilly morning here at the National Treasury, but it's not chilly enough for us to be here live and direct where, as you can see, activities are ongoing in preparations for the process that culminates into the budget reading that happens at the Parliament buildings later in the afternoon. As you can see behind me, we can see the ceremonial red carpets that are usually being cleaned. We are not sure how often the vacuuming happens, but it appears it continues throughout the day. And we can see also the pomp and color in terms of preparations as we wait for CS Mbadi to come down the stairs. Maybe just to give you a picture of what is happening out here right now, the police are here deployed heavily just to control any crowd or unnecessary disturbance that might disturb the process here. And we can also see vehicular traffic is moderate. If you are planning to come near the National Treasury, you might find some kind of traffic calming procedures going on here where the police are just making sure that there is proper movement of vehicles even as we prepare for this budget day. Also, we can see a battery of journalists, as is tradition, that we find us clamoring for the best picture. You know, the famous briefcase that happens here where the National Treasury CS lifts up the budget briefcase for Kenyans to see that contains a speech that is going to be read in Parliament buildings. I can also tell you here that my colleague Trevor, our colleague Trevor, is inside the National Treasury building, who is also looking down upon us from atop of the building there, just to give you more updates. But for us down here, we will continue to give you live and direct updates. We will pull one or two Kenyans, if we find them, just to give us their opinion on what is going to be read about the 4.2 trillion shilling budget here. Back to you, O'Brien, unless you have a question for me at this time.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Alan Aoko, for joining us there. I mean, it's chilly and definitely, it is still too early to expect John Mbadi to come out, but we are looking at about at around 2:30. That's when we expect the Treasury CS to come out. But I just want to find out from you, Aoko, if you can hear me. Traditionally we are accustomed to seeing a lot of people, milling around the National Treasury buildings, just waiting to see a glimpse of that briefcase. Do we still have the public streaming to the National Treasury? And if yet, what is their mood, if you can read it?
Yes, well, we do have some members of the public walking around here. Mostly, you find the public who usually work around the offices that surround the Treasury building, the Kenyatta International Convention Center, the Central Bank of Kenya, the Kenya Revenue Authority buildings. Those are the people we are seeing walking around here. The usual Kenyans as well who are just commuting their daily commutes are also walking around here, but they're not particularly stopping to, view what is happening. We can see, as you know, near this street here, we have a major bus stop where we have many Kenyans using this route as a transit to their offices. But perhaps later we'll start seeing them milling around the building just to get a glimpse of what is happening at this time, and also perhaps also pull one or two of them who are curious to see what's happening and ask them a few questions about what they feel about the day and what they feel is affecting them in the budget that is going to be read today, O'Brien.
Very well. Thank you very much. Of course, we'll be touching base, later on just to get a view of what's happening there around the National Treasury, and that is the building that houses the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, that is John Bandi, who at around 2:30 is expected to troop inside the National Parliament just to table and, of course, read the budget speech for the year 2025-2026. I told you we have our teams there. And so we shall be crisscrossing the city just to get a glimpse of what's happening. And of course, we have our teams in Mombasa and Kisumu. They will also be giving us a breakdown of what's happening there. I told you I have a team of seasoned policy as well as tax experts joining me here in studio so that they can break it down for us what exactly the budget means for you and me, what should be done and what should not be done. This is a man that you know, you've seen him on your screen. He's becoming popular and famous. I'm talking about Leonard Kafafa. He's a policy and governance expert. He's joining me this morning. Leonard, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Very good indeed. And we also have Farhia Jama. Yeah, she's a tax expert and an advocate of the High Court. She works with Jama and Mombi Advocates. Jama, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And it's good to have you.
Thank you.
I want to start with you, Jama, from where you see or from where you stand. What do you make of the year 2025-2026 budget?
I think this budget is really going to be a tough streamlining process for revenue collection, because they are targeting to raise 4.29 trillion. Last year, they were looking to raise 3.3 trillion, which they met their target. So it means we have to tighten our seatbelts, and the government is going to ensure that they are going to focus on how to raise the 4.29 trillion. And
you see, you're talking about the last year's budget, and it came at a time when it faced a lot of political and economic headwinds because of the widespread protests that rocked the nation. This time around, we're not in that kind of a situation. You don't expect it to be some sort of a smooth sailing for the government.
Yes, because what is happening is that these were like government's austerity measures to ensure that they are able to pay their debts. But then again, at what cost? So the citizens were protesting last year because it meant that they have to pay more taxes, and more tax bases were being, increased from the food, from all that. That's why people were protesting. But this time, this new finance bill has changed a bit of strategy. They're not now taxing what they were taxing in the last finance bill. Right now, they have been trying to create more administration, tightening of the loopholes where money was leaking from government. And so they've created new policies, physical policies that can ensure that money is not leaking anymore. But then again, there's still taxes that are not being discussed, which are also going to be affecting the common mwananchi. Yes.
And when you talk about taxes that are not being discussed,
Yeah.
You're talking about taxes like which ones?
Like the informal sector will now be taxed. They're also trying to see how the medium-sized enterprises are going to pay taxes, and they used to be in the tax-exempt category. So if you're a startup, you're a middle-sized business, some of those businesses were enjoying some tax-exempt in the former tax policies, but right now they're being moved from that. So the VAT exempt that they were enjoying is going to be removed, and now they have to be paying taxes. So people like farmers, the small-scale business owners, smallholder businesses will now have to be paying taxes. Also, a new tax on vehicles. So the CRSP has been changed, which means you importing cars will now have new payments of the taxes at the import.
Very well.
So those are the things that are actually being introduced in this finance bill. Yes.
And when you look critically at the taxation policy, you see a spirited effort by the National Treasury mandarins to not deepen, taxation measures, but to broaden, the tax base, and that has always been a big challenge because you have a situation whereby less than 15% of Kenyans, pay taxes, and that's where I want Leona to come in, as a governance and a policy expert. What is Treasury trying to tell Kenyans, when they are embarking on a serious tax broadening measures?
Thank you, Brian. Tax payment is an obligation on the part of every citizen. It's a civic duty. It is not optional. For the longest, we have allowed a section of Kenyans, particularly those with pay slips, to carry the tax burden of the entire country. And I'll give you an example. I think we have about 8 million PINs, personal identification numbers, in this country. Of those 8 million, about 3 million belong to corporations, to companies. That means about 1 million of those PINs then are with individuals. What that tells you is that it's 1 million individuals are shouldering the tax burdens of about 15 million others who could possibly be brought into the tax bracket. So what the government is trying to do now is to rope in the other 15 million or so who are not in the tax bracket, who are not in the tax base. So that is by widening the tax base. So as my colleague Faria has said, there will be a bit of broadening of the tax base to include people who previously have not been paying any tax at all to do their civic duty.
And I mean, we know for sure that paying taxes is not fun, and a lot of people don't like paying taxes, and if they're given a chance not to pay taxes, they will not pay tax. And so the question then comes, you talking about almost 16 million people who are supposed to be paying taxes, and in a country whereby you have almost 23 million voters. So where are the majority of taxpayers? Why are they not paying their taxes? Have they been allowed not to pay taxes?
I think for the longest, paying tax has been deemed a very complicated affair. The way you file your returns, the way you do this, that, and the other. And for a good tax regime, the characteristics of a good tax regime is that it ought to be simplified, so that every Tom, Dick, and Harry with an income can then pay tax. So that has not been the case in the past. It's been a very complicated affair, calculating your taxes, computing them, and filing your returns and that sort of thing. It is now being simplified. So I'll give you an example of one of those simplifications. You have the turnover tax, I think at 3%. It is simple in the sense that you don't have to do complex calculations. All you have to do is look at your turnover in a given period and pay 3% of that turnover as your tax obligation. So that's the simplification we are looking at, simplification of the tax code. Basically to bring in more people on board.
And when you talk to business people, I mean, they are saying that, for the first time in many years, at least now they can do their business with some level of certainty. We are accustomed to a situation whereby you don't know which taxes are going to come up, you don't know which taxes are going to come down. But right now we're seeing a situation whereby now the government is saying, hey, look, it's not a matter that we have to keep on increasing taxes on A, B, C, D, or lowering taxes on these. We can maintain taxes at a certain level just to give businesses time to breathe. But the question is this sustainable, or is just a lie before the storm?
So one of the things is every time any country or government increases taxes, they're killing their own cash cow. So the regions and countries that have thrived more are the ones that gave a tax, a breather for their citizens. If you look at other countries that have given tax incentives and all that, their businesses were thriving. So what the government right now is getting it wrong is revenue does not just come from only taxes. It comes from other things, that from how the economy is, are their businesses growing? So if you look at last year and why you were seeing all that protests were that so many businesses were being auctioned. So as much as you think that increasing taxes will pay maybe whatever needs to be paid for today, what about tomorrow? You need to think about long term. If we continue taxing the citizen or taxpayer to the brink, does it mean that the government will reach a point where they will not have any businesses? Like right now, this year, if you've noticed, some of the biggest international companies have shut down, or some have moved their business operations from Kenya because of the taxes. So then a lot of people have lost their jobs. 200, 300. You can even notice different industries from media, manufacturing, all these businesses are shutting down. What does that mean for Kenya? It means that we will no longer be able to sustain ourselves, and the taxes that you're looking for, you're killing the business that brings the money for it to pay its taxes. So that's what I mean by the cash cow. So you need to make sure that this cash cow lives and breathes in a certain ecosystem. And this ecosystem is to make them grow so that they can pay more taxes or can pay you a certain amount of tax. But then if you kill it completely, there's no cash flow in the country, then it means that the businesses are not thriving. So they're just surviving. Yeah.
And when you look in terms of our expenditure plan, you see Kenya is an economy supported by 3 or 4 sectors, one of them being tourism, agriculture, and the service industry.
Yeah.
When you look at our expenditure plan, do you feel that we are feeding the cow, or we are feeding the goose that lays the golden eggs?
With this new budget that has been, which is going to be read, right? You find that they cut down on these main industries that actually grow our economy, like from tourism.
Yeah.
They did a whole cut of 840 million. You are looking at the schools, the governance, administration, the funds where it used to go to, so that this economy can be active, because Kenya is a tourist hub. So many people come here because tourism is one of our main industries. So if you cut down on tourism, then how sustainable are we going to be as a country? And then now some of the things that they cut down on is schools. Education is a key factor. So you can find that secondary schools, university education, there's a cut down on the financing that used to go to these institutions. So if you cut down on university, secondary and primary, and you can see even KCPE candidates are right now paying for something we used to enjoy, to get to sit for an exam for free. So right now the parents have to pay for it. So that's one of the challenges we're going to face. Education, sports, and these main areas have gotten a steep cut. And yeah.
You see, I was listening to John Bandy the other day when he was giving a press briefing, and he was talking about, by sealing taxation loopholes and improving efficiency around tax administration. You know, the government is targeting to raise an extra 30 to 40 billion shillings. And I was left asking myself, is this the most that we can do if we were to streamline our tax administration and our tax policies and seal the ever-leaking loopholes? Do you think we can realize more out of this?
I think so. It's an ongoing conversation because we have what is called the National Tax Policy. I think it's a document that is a work in progress.
It has been there. I mean,
it has been there.
We've been working on it
for a while.
Yes.
Good things take long to come, you know. An elephant gives birth after 2 years, mouse after 19 days, you know. So you want big things, you wait for the elephant. If you want small things, then be in a rush and look out for the mouse. But I think the government is trying. That tax policy,
the national tax policy.
Yes, national tax policy is something that is needful at the moment because it brings predictability. As Faria said, the reason why some businesses may want to pull out is that lack of predictability, because you come into this jurisdiction and you don't know what your tax liability is, or you think you have, and you make your budgets, you make your projections, and then you're hit by other tax regimes that you had not budgeted for. But when you have predictability, then you're able to make your investments, you make your projections, and know that in 5, 6, 7 years, this is what you realize, this is your break-even period, and that sort of thing. So that's the policy that is in the making, and that when effective, when it starts effectively, will address a lot of this unpredictability, a lot of uncertainty about around the tax, our tax administration. But there are still things that this budget has provided for, things like advance pricing agreements. I think these are things that are very attractive to investors who are looking to come and set up here, and some prices of things and stuff like that are locked up for a period of 5 years. So there's that predictability that we are talking about. So yes, I think it's a work in progress, short term, but long term, it will yield stability. It will be sustainable in the long run. In the long run. Yeah.
And you know, when you look at the proposed budget, we're talking about 4.2 trillion Kenya shillings. And we're talking about a deficit of almost 820 billion Kenya shillings. And the question that people are asking, is there any way that we can budget without having deficits?
Absolutely not. As Faria has said, there are some things that we've even had to cut back on, you know, and they will pinch mwananchi. For example, capitation to schools, and the fact that we now have to pay for examination fees and that sort of thing. These are things that are really going to hit hard at mwananchi, and you can't put too much of a burden on mwananchi because at the end of the day, it results in what we had last year. So what happens? Last year, you remember last year's budget had a deficit of about 900 billion shillings, thereabout. Yeah. And the proposal was to actually reduce that deficit through aggressive taxation. So that the borrowing then would be limited to about 400 or 500 billion shillings. But what happened when we instituted that aggressive tax regime? It didn't go down well with citizens, and we had what we had in June last year, the events that culminated in the infamous June 25th storming of Parliament last year. So that's what the government seeks to avoid at the moment. Unfortunately, it means that that deficit, whatever it is, because we are running a very tight budget, everything is expedient, everything is necessary, that difference of about 916 billion shillings thereabout has to be borrowed. It's unfortunate reality. It's either you have your...
What does it say about our expenditure plans? What does it say about our lifestyle? Because, and I want to address you now specifically as Leonard, if every year you are learning a deficit in your lifestyle, what is it talking about? Are you going to be sustainable in the future?
It just means we live beyond our means at some point in the future. And as I've said before, the elephant in the room is public debt. A lot of revenue that is being collected is going towards debt service. I mean, this year we are talking of 1.1 trillion shillings. That's a huge amount of money. When you look at it in terms of debt, the ratio of debt to GDP, we are way above the recommended threshold, which should be about 60% for developing countries like Kenya. We are at about 67, 68, 69%. Yeah.
You know, developing countries, the debt ceiling should be about 55% of their GDP.
Yes, they keep adjusting. It should be now 55%, as you rightly put it. And we are headed towards the 70s. You are just shy of 70% of GDP. That means we are deeply indebted as a nation. Now, what debt is? Debt basically, let me redefine debt. Debt is basically tax in advance. If we take up debt today, it means we will pay for it using tax revenues in future. So debt that was taken in past times by past administrations are what we are paying right now. So we don't have much of a choice. The best that we can do is to figure out a way of doing away with short-term expensive debt, which was taken in past times, replacing it perhaps with a longer tenor, a cheaper debt. Buying us some relief in some place, and then making our adjustments even as a country in terms of our spending, in terms of our priorities, in terms of what we need to do to get ahead. So that's the conversation now. Yeah.
And, you know, because the reason why, you know, we have accumulated so much debt, the government says, is because, you know, we needed to put some infrastructures in place. And some of it we can see it, like the SGR, like the expansion of Mombasa Port, like the construction of the Lamu ports, roads going all the way to northern Kenya, and so much. But there is a concept that we call the return on investment, you know, in business. Have we ever sat down to ask ourselves, what are we getting in return for our investment?
That's a good question, Brian. And it makes me wonder what policy experts were doing back then in the day, taking on very expensive short-term debt. SGR, for instance, has been said to be comparatively more expensive, possibly by double what others in the region are paying. Tanzania has an SGR that has put at a fraction of our cost, and it's electrified for that matter. When you look at the Eurobonds that we took, and you cannot trace any tangible benefit that accrued from those Eurobonds, then you wonder. And you know, Eurobond is an expensive loan. Yeah. And the problem with it is that it's payable in one lump sum when it matures. So those are the things that make me wonder what the policy experts were thinking about back in the day. So, but that's what under the bridge. Our reality is it happened. The other reality is that we have to pay. These are sovereign loans, and sovereign loans have to be paid by the sovereign. We are the sovereign, we are the people. So we have to pay these loans. And there's absolutely no question of not paying them. People have talked about odious debt and that sort of thing. Problem is, nobody can prove that that debt is odious. It was taken by the government of the day. It was properly signed for. And it's with the citizens now who must pay that debt. Then you also know that debt is not, debt, unlike other obligations, is not negotiable. The first charge to the consolidated fund, that is where the tax revenues and other revenues go, government revenues, is towards debt. So we collect all this money. The first thing that we do is pay our sovereign debt. Yeah.
He's talking about debt and what we've been doing with our debts. And I mean, it's true. It is high time as a country that we started taking stock of the project that we have put up using debt and asking ourselves, have we managed to utilize this project? Like, for example, when you look at SGR from Nairobi to Naivasha, I mean, I know there are talks to move it all the way to Malaba. The whole project was intended to create efficiency around the corridor, what we call the Northern Transport Corridor, by creating a system that moves cargo from the port of Mombasa all the way to Malaba, and it goes to other countries. Have we managed to do this?
So one of the things I like what my colleague Leonard is talking about is at any time when we were taking up these debts, we didn't have a strategy of what exactly are we benefiting, what is our return of investment. So when they were doing the financial planning, they needed to have known what's the citizen's return on investment. Anytime you even take even a personal debt at home or whenever, you need to make sure, how am I going to recover this amount of money? And then how am I going to benefit and what is going to pay for my debt? That's a normal kind of person thinking, right? So the government was supposed to think about, okay, yes, we've built an SGR, we've built a road, we've built all this. But at what point were we going to recover this debt? Yeah, and then at what point were we going to get to benefit as citizens from this facility infrastructure? So there's good thing to invest in an infrastructure, but there's one thing to not have a plan of how you're going to recover from that infrastructure. So we are like a headless chicken. We have good ambitions. We want to invest in good things for the country, but we have not thought about it on a long-term basis, the same way my colleague was mentioning. We thought about short-term. Yes, it's good for aesthetics, we have good SGR, but the revenues from SGR, are they able to service the debt and ensure that we pay on time and we are not now doing debt servicing? If you pay on time and you pay the debt before time, then it means you have reduced your interest that you are supposed to pay on this debt. So I don't think, yes, as much as the consolidated fund, a specific amount has to pay for the debt because of the charge that is on it. But what is the priority? Most of the Kenyans and the citizens, even last year, were just asking, can you give us the total amount of debt that our country is facing? And at what point, how much have we paid for? That information is what we are lacking. The Auditor General, as much as they publish this information, we're not getting the clear picture of what this SGR and other infrastructure debts, what was paid for and how much is remaining. Because we are always in that debt cycle, a rat cycle. You're just taking the next new debt, paying the other debt, and then coming back. And that's why we are not moving anywhere. Yeah. So every time because it becomes a liability if you have done financial literacy or understood what financial literacy is, you cannot now take one liability, pay the other liability. You become a slave all your life.
It's become a rat race.
It becomes a rat race. You're not solving any problem, so we're just moving around the same place. Yeah.
Kafafa, I mean, we were here during the former president, the late Mwai Kibaki's era. And there was a body that used to be called the National Socio-Economic Council, the NESC. It was made up or composed of highly acclaimed professionals, and they were not just Kenyans. You know, we had people from as far as Malaysia, Singapore, and the whole point was to advise the cabinet on critical areas which requires interventional measures. Unfortunately, we don't have this these days. Is it high time that we bring on board this kind of an entity that can be guiding Kenya's socio-economic development, as opposed to leaving these two politicians to decide?
I think we have such a council in place. The president has economic advisors led by the internationally acclaimed David Ndii. And Ndii actually is one of the world's top economists. And he's brilliant. I mean, he's doing a good job of advising the president. Problem is that we are now...
Do you know who are the other members of that?
They are different advisors for different functions. For example, Monica Juma, I think, advises on security. I think. Then there are others who advise on women's rights. I think Charity, Harriet Chigai. Then there are a whole lot of others who've been brought in. There are others who advise specifically on finance. We are talking of people like former Treasury CS Henry Rotich. Yeah, he's been co-opted in the President's Advisory Council to advise on matters of finance. And you know, Henry Rotich is a Harvard man. So we have the best brains in this country when it comes to giving advice to the president. The unfortunate thing is we are now digging ourselves out of a hole. We found ourselves in a hole. We are now digging ourselves out of a hole. And let me ride on what Faria has talked of. That's the SGR. Yeah. You know, you have a project like the SGR. It's a sound project. It actually is part of Vision 2030, which Mwai Kibaki initiated, and it was worked on by a lot of professionals before they came up with that blueprint for Kenya's economic development to usher us into middle-income status by the year 2030. So Vision 2030 has aspects of it that are meant to be implemented by every successive president. So if you pick as an incumbent, if you pick one or two of those aspects and you implement them, you move the country forward towards attaining middle-income status by 2030. So the last administration picked SGR as one of those things that they would, one of the projects that they would implement.
And Lamu Port.
And Lamu Port. Again, now riding on what Faria has said, the problem was never so much the SGR, but the cost of it. And especially the fact that a project of that, let me put it this way. Public projects, when they are mooted, when they're conceived, are supposed to benefit multiple generations, not just one generation. My generation, her generation, perhaps the next generation. And the payment of those projects then should be spread across the generations that benefit from it, which is not what happened when it came to a project like the SGR. SGR is meant to last us another 50 or 60 or so years. So we are talking of about 2 or 3 generations that should benefit from it. But what is happening is it's just one generation that is shouldering the burden of SGR. So that's where the problem arises. That lapse in policy. That lapse in policy. And if you extrapolate that now across all these fancy projects that the last administration undertook, then you realize that that's where the problem comes from. And just to correct a misimpression that has gone around, it's not like the government does not know how much debt it owes. The National Debt Register is actually public record. I know Gen Z's last year kept on saying, oh, debt is hidden. I mean, there's nefarious borrowing and that sort of thing. No, the National Debt Register is actually a matter of public record, and it's available to whosoever asks for it. It's in the public domain.
And of course, it's very easy because you can just go to the National Treasury's website, and then you go to the National Debt Register, and you'll be able to see how much Kenya owes who, and out of that you'll be able to know how much. I also wanted to bring in the concept of when you look at our political system and political and governance system. I mean, there is a feeling that it's a very expensive bus to run, and it is milking the country dry. You have more than 300 members of parliament. You have 66 senators. You have 47 governors, 47 deputy governors. You have more than 3,000 MCAs. You have their PAs. You have all these people. And this is a small country of about 60 million people. Is it high time that we also, as a country, called ourselves for a meeting and asked ourselves, aren't we running such an expensive system? And is it high time that we looked into this political system that we embraced in 2013 and ask ourselves, is it really working for us, or is it high time that we looked into areas where we can cut down?
It's not so much a matter of cost of the burden of administration, rather than the return on investment that we are getting. I mean, we have people like MCAs. How many of us know their local MCA? And how many of us have actually gone to our local MCA for issues that affect us? I mean, we have sewer lines that break down. We have power outages on occasion. We have this, that, and the other. That we have community problems at a local level that should be handled by the MCA. How many of us look for private solutions to these public problems? So that's the problem. We don't have a good return on our investment. This structure, this administrative structure, was born of the Constitution 2010. And it's Kenyans who wanted it because they wanted power devolved from the center all the way to the grassroots. So it's not like it's just something that was arbitrarily decided on. It is a thing that Kenyans wanted, and we cannot do away with it at the moment because we need power to get all the way down to the grassroots. But if I may add, when we have counties, yes, we have 47 counties and we have other administrative functions. Why don't we put these counties to task? Why don't we put governors to task to tell us what they do with the funds that they receive, the devolved funds that they receive from the national government? Because it's a lot of money. Why do we have discrepancies across counties? We have counties like Makueni under Kifuta Kibwana excelling. We have other counties now like Muranga that are doing a great exploit, yet they receive the exact same amount of money from the exchequer as other counties. Why is there a difference between them and the other counties that have nothing to show for it? So those are the questions we should be asking. What are we getting in terms of our return, in terms of return on the investment that we've made in this wieldy animal called the devolved government? Yeah, so those are the questions we should be asking, not whether we should repeal some of those laws that have brought these things into place.
But between me and you, Leonard, I mean, we agree that we were in a trial and error stage of devolution. I mean, this is a system that has been there now for how many years? 13 years now? And this is where I want to bring on board Farah here. Is it high time that we sat down and we interrogated what has worked, what has not worked, and we amend areas? Because, I mean, good thing can be made better, and a better thing can always be made best. Isn't it high time that we looked into this? Because, yes, we've been having devolution now for 13 years. What socio-economic impact has this had on a country called Kenya?
Number one, we're just focusing on the county. Devolution over time has been one of the things that are being highlighted to have, affected our budget or our spending. But then again, do you see that the budget of this time, 4.29 trillion, only 405 billion is going to the counties? But half of the budget, 2.465 trillion, is going to the executive. The three arms of government are the ones that are actually taking most and the chunk of this budget. So the money that is even going to the counties, the same way my colleague is mentioning, is some counties have even a disparity. The county amount, if you check, 405 billion, yeah, compared to the executive, what exactly in the administration of the executive is costing us 2.45 trillion, yeah? So we need to look at what are we spending on, yeah? Because even with the judiciary right now has 27.7 billion. If you look at the parliament, they have 47 billion, yeah? So they just moved a small inch. What we just need to ask ourselves, is it the high advisory that is on the executive? Are the cabinets being paid more? What is happening at the top level? Because the change has to come from the top. Years ago, our president had mentioned that he's even going to consider reducing his own salary. Yeah, if you are the father of a house and your house, you're unable to pay for the small necessities in your house, what's the first thing you will do? You'll find ways in which you can reduce the spending or the lifestyle that you have. But then again, we see that the lifestyle of our politician is still, expanding. It's not even the citizens anymore or the administration. Yeah, it's the lifestyle of our leaders that is expanding, that we have to pay for. So part of the spending has to be thought through. There has to be a ceiling to what kind of spending we want to spend on. And then whichever spending we're spending on, there has to be a return of investment, because the services are actually becoming poor as we go along. But then the money that we are allocating to some of these arms of government is increasing. So at what point do we get value for what we spend on?
I still want you to hold on to that thought because, you know, if you have interrogated the Controller of Budget reports, you know, annually, the report has always highlighted the mismanagement of resources and at the county levels. For example, when you look at the report for the year 2024, it was raising very serious questions about the efficiency of counties when it comes to management of public resources. And one of the highlights was the fact that, you know, counties are spending almost 80% of their allocation on recurrent expenditure.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Which means that a lot of, like, for example, the 4 or 5 billion shillings they are going to get this year.
Yeah.
I mean, a significant chunk of this money will go towards paying salaries, paying bills, and all that. Then the whole point of having devolution was to bring development closer to the mwananchi. By allocating 78% of county budgets to recurrent expenditure, are we devolving development?
We actually devolving inefficiency. Yeah, we are devolving inefficiency because by law, I think recurrent expenditure is capped. And what happens at the national level should also happen at the devolved functions. If I'm not wrong, I think the cap for recurrent expenditure, there's a cap for development, or rather there is a provision for development, which should be about 35% of the budget. Then there's a provision for recurrent expenditure, which should be maybe, I'm not too sure about the figures, but I'm thinking...
The development is supposed to be 30%.
30%.
And then a recurrent is 70%.
7%.
Yeah. But
that's not what will happen. As you've rightly said, you find in instances where we spend 80% on recurrent expenditure on salaries and that sort of thing. And most times, actually, if you look at most of the counties, they hardly spend more than 10% on development.
Some countries don't even spend anything. They don't even spend 5% of their budget on development.
Yeah, which defeats the essence of devolution in the first place, and which also just means that we've devolved the inefficiencies of the national government to the county level. But again, it boils down to the competencies of whoever we elect as governors. That's why I keep asking why there should be a discrepancy, say, when you look at the affairs of a county like Muranga, where the governor is doing exploits, where he's actually increased his appropriations in aid, which is money that is supposed to be collected by the counties, as in terms of cess fees, in terms of levies and that sort of thing. He's increased it actually to over $1 billion. He's gone beyond the target that has been set for him. Then you look at other counties whose names I won't mention, but who don't have anything by way of appropriations in aid and who have nothing to show for the same devolved funds that they receive, same as Muranga government. So it boils down to the competencies or to the nature of the people that we elect, and it just actually falls on us as the electorate because we are the people who put them there. So it is time actually we became circumspect about the people that we put in government at all levels of government. We need people to present their CVs, to present their track records, what they've done in the past and what they intend to do for us, and to hold them to account. Not just have manifestos that are for show, but manifestos that can actually be schemes that we use to rate people and to hold them to account and to, if possible, to recall them, because the Constitution allows us the power to recall leaders who are not functioning to their optimal.
The Kenya Revenue Authority, you know, is expected to, will raise the significant portion of this year's budget, and you're talking about 3.3 trillion Kenya shillings. Do you see in the current economic and business environment KRA having the muscles to correct this? Let's first of all, before you respond to that question, let's first of all go to Khalid, who is in the city center. I mean Trevor, not Khalid. He's at the National Treasury. He's about to give us an update, and I can see he's surrounded by people. Let's get to hear from Trevor. Trevor, take it up.
All right, a very good morning to you, and well, thank you very much, Brian, Kimani. We are coming to you live from the National Treasury, where the Cabinet Secretary, John Badi, was engaging a group of young people, especially the youth leaders from various institutions in the country. And you'll remember last year, what started as a tax revolt quickly morphed into a full-scale protest with the young people, popularly referred to as the Gen Z, asking for government reforms, and not just in tax, but also for transparency and youth inclusion in the budget-making process, and of course, even the rethinking of government in terms of spending. And joining me here behind me is the Gen Zs, there's various student leaders from various institutions, and we're going to have a conversation on whether they feel heard or whether the Gen Z voice has been considered this time round, and on the thought on what they have and what emerged as a loud and bold and organized protest and conversations regarding this country's running of affairs, and whether now they feel represented. And moving forward to 2025, the questions many are asking is whether the government listened, and do these young people feel that their issues have been well heard and articulated. Joining me now are various student leaders from various institutions across the country. We have JQuat, we have UON, we have ZTEC, we have clearly, maybe everybody is here. I want to start with one of them. Maybe you're the president from the University of Nairobi. You can start by introducing yourself and then tell me what you think about this year's budget.
Thank you so much. This is Derek Troy-Rusana, the president of the University of Nairobi. Today we've been here. We've had an engagement with the Cabinet Secretary for Finance. And what we think about today's budget is, number one, that communication has been streamlined from last year. The communication has been streamlined and more partners and more parties have been involved, because this is a budget for all Kenyans and for everyone. So the engagement and the communication has been made more effectively. But ours is also to touch on what affects the students and what mainly affects the youth, which is education, which is how they live, their conditions. And that is why we are here to raise to the CS issues on capitation. What is there in terms of the budget, in terms of what the government is providing for capitation, and what is there in terms of what the government is providing for help. So I think it has been more engaging and it has involved more parties.
Mm-hmm. All right, you mentioned about the capitation. I want to hear from you as well. What do you think about the government, especially or considering what they're putting into education? Do you feel that as students it's making it easier? You represent a number of students. What do you think about this year's budget?
Okay, what I can say is that this year's budget, even though they have increased the capitation to some extent for the education sector, I don't think that we will really solve most of our problems, but some of it, just there will be a little increase from the last year. But we really hope that even though we are working on these budgets, we can only do better next year. Well, because for me, I feel that there have been some increase from last year's budget. Mm-hmm. So for me, I feel it will help, but not to the extent that would really benefit the students how they would expect it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. One of the things that took the youth out on the streets last year was one of the push they were making is for the government to cut on spending. Do you think that has been addressed? What's your take on that? I'll hear from you and then I'll move to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Odwora Isaiah Kapisi, Secretary General KCA. I believe last year when the CES Treasury, John Badi, was being interviewed, he clearly stated that the buck will stop with him and he will go to cut cartels. Even in the morning discussion, we had a roundtable discussion. We posed the question to him that how best, since Margaret Nakango has been highlighting that there is clearly a corrupted budget, which is corruption in its end, how best is he going to deal with it? And he clearly mentioned and explained to us that he's really fighting it, and that going forward, from now, this budget to the next budget, that there are going to be a clear government spending. They are going to cut on cost cutting. They are going to cut maybe on majority of their travels, because they travel a lot in foreign countries. So that is going to be cut.
All right, cutting on wasteful spending. Just come closer. I want to hear from you as well. Do you feel that the making of this budget this year has incorporated the views of the youth?
Okay, my name is Ferdinand Awonda from ZTEC University, and just to echo what my good colleague has said about cutting government spending. We as the Gen Zs, we feel like the government has not done that much in cutting down spending. When you look, we went through some of the articles from World Bank. You know, they are the major advisors in terms of financial management, and they advised the Kenyan government that they should reduce expenses, especially on travels. It is noticed that the senior government officials, when they go outside the country, they tend to spend a lot much than they should be spending. So the government should look at that, and especially the Gen Zs, when they went for demonstrations, they called out the government to cut down spending in terms of advisors. But what have we seen? Our good president, Honorable President William Samoei Ruto, we've seen him adding more advisors, and this has led to burdening the taxpayer. But what I can also say is that from my point of view and from our point of view, we've seen the government engage more on public participation and engaging people from various stakeholders so that we can see this finance bill as inclusive. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Of course, talking about the youth, of course, you guys are student leaders, and Karani, you are the president of the Kenyatta University. I want to hear from you. Help is such a big deal. Students have been out on the streets talking about help. What do you have to say in regards to the government's plan on either increasing the help?
Thank you very much. My name is Glenn Karani Gikundi. I'm the president of Kenyatta University. Today in the morning, we have had an engagement with the CS, Treasury, Honorable John Badi, and from the conversation and a petition that the comrades are really suffering without enough funding, and the CS has committed that this year's budget is increasing the budget for help from 35 million to almost 35 billion to almost 41 billion. I think that it will be a boost for the comrades, and we have also petitioned to him that the capitations in the universities can be done in a manner that it's friendly to the students. Students cannot be asked to call off, not to register for units, not to do the exams. And he has committed to it. Thank you very much.
All right. Of course, the finance bill is still such a big deal, and of course, this comes in the backdrop of the protest and the revolt that we saw last year. So, in this year's finance bill, what do you feel like the proposals that impact the digital services, the Gen Z area and the sections? Do you feel like the government has done enough?
My name is Prince Wise, and on the topic of digital content creators and on the Gen Z field, we've heard that they are trying to reduce taxations, but obviously it won't apply immediately. It will take some time. So during that time, there may be a bit of losses, but we want to thank Honorable John Badi for what he's been doing and for the helping of the Gen Z according to that media field, and also the way he's been interacting with people. That's why last year, a lot of people are out on the streets because no one was hearing their opinions. But now there's been interactions and ways on how to improve the finance bill. That's all we have.
All right. Thank you very much. And let me hear from you. Do you think like there is much more that the government still needs to do in terms of, having the youth at the core, at the center, especially in the budget making process, so that you feel heard? Do you feel what are some of the sectors that you feel the government still needs to do much more?
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Peace Lavisa, student President JCOT. To get to your question, from this year, budget preparation, the budget making process of the financial year 2025. I believe it has been a good step, a good initiative by the government, trying to engage different partners, different stakeholders, more youth. Like today, we had a session with the CS, round table where we got to converse. We heard from him, got insights, and we also shared our views. I believe there's still a lot of room for improvement. A lot can be done, especially in terms of prior engagement, early engagement, months before the budget making process itself, and in various sectors, not even just matters of education. because even as youth, as comrades, we not only engage in education but also in business. So what are some of the initiatives or ways the government can help these comrades while they're still in university and support them in terms of entrepreneurship, skill development, and general capacity building? So there's a lot of room for improvement, but the government has took a step in engaging the youth, and I believe going forward into the future, that is the right step and the right direction to take. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Of course, all of you are student leaders, and one day you will be at the helm of this nation's leadership. I also want to hear from you. What would you do different if you are the president of this country, or even just the cabinet secretary at the Ministry of Treasury?
This is Derek Troy Rusana again, president of the University of Nairobi. And even as we journey through this, at some point we all want to become the president. I think what will be important to do differently is to listen more. As a leader, we need to have presidents who listen and presidents who come back and engage more with the youth. Because even if the youth form a huge percentage of opinion shapers in this country, so we need to listen more to the youth, and the job of a president is also to be merciful, even with the taxpayers. As much as we are going to pay tax, we need to pay tax in a considerable rate. We don't pay tax to just fund the economy, but we should also consider, well, how is it affecting the people who are paying the tax in itself? So I think that those are the things that I do differently as the president of the Republic, if I was.
All right.
And I'll be.
All right. Thank you very much, and I'm wishing you all the best. Thank you very much. I've heard from a gentleman. Allow me, just for the sake of gender balance, allow me just to engage her just a little bit. I want to hear your view as a youth. You probably the first time you're making your way into the National Treasury. What do you think about the kind of soft approach that the government is probably perceived to be taking in terms of engaging the young people?
Sylvia Kemunto. First of all, I'm privileged to be here. I think it's really nice and thoughtful to involve the youths in such decision-making processes, because, as you said, listening more, listening to the voice of what they're telling you, because we won't expect some specific personas to be the ones who are representing us always. Yeah, so engaging us here, helping us get an insight of what the finance bill is like, for me, it's sensational. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kemunto. Quickly, just tell me your name and what you think about this process.
My name is Ezekiel Otieno Diambo. I want to talk because last year we were demonstrating about the finance bill. Some of us were arrested because I'm a victim of it. I was arrested 3 times.
Oh, you were arrested?
I was arrested 3 times because of demonstrating against the finance bill. But right now, I'm with it. I can't demonstrate anymore about it.
You won't be out on the street?
I can't be out on the street because the finance bill now is perfect.
What makes it perfect now?
Because like everything that we are demonstrating about, all about taxes, right now they are good. Yeah, we can't talk about them anymore. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much, young people. I am very happy to be interacting with the baraza of the youth in this country. And of course, these are student leaders, and of course, they are people you should expect to see in the country's leadership in the future. Allow me to hand it over back to you, Brian. Later on, we'll be catching up with the Cabinet Secretary, who is currently in his office. We expect him to do the ceremonial briefcase lift later this afternoon. Of course, we'll be telling you more about the contents of the briefcase, the budget policy statements, and everything that is there. We have also my colleague who is at the ground floor, where the Cabinet Secretary will be doing the ceremonial briefcase lift, and we'll be giving you more details about that. But I hope this conversation has been insightful even to our audience across the country. For now, it's back to you from Trevor and my colleague Jane behind the scenes. Back to you in studio.
Wow, I love it. I love it. I mean, getting to hear what the young people are talking about, and of course, being at the center of where the conversation is taking place, the National Treasury. I mean, I just love it, listening to those young people talking about their aspirations and their expectations from the finance minister. And of course, they're doing it inside the National Treasury building. Think about this. That would not have happened like 5, 10, 15 years ago. I mean, it never used to happen. But now we are seeing a situation whereby now the young people are being involved in the budget-making process. And of course, this is a positive development. I mean, coming against the backdrop of what happened last year. Clearly, you can see that, there are changes and the government is listening to what young people are talking about. And guess who is giving that story? It's a Gen Z himself, Trevor Ngendo. Of course, they are interacting with young people and getting to hear from them what are their expectations. That's the kind of stuff that we have for you here on KBC Channel 1. You're watching Biz Check. It's a special coverage of the 2025-2026 budget. I told you from the word go, we shall be crisscrossing our country and getting to hear from different quarters on their expectation and experience with this year's budget. Well, a break is well deserved thereafter. We are coming back with more conversation right here in studio and, of course, more analysis from the outside the studio.
This Father's Day, tell us why your dad is your hero. Is it his strength, his kindness, or his bad dad jokes? Post a 1-minute video sharing what makes your dad unforgettable, and you could win a one-night staycation at one of these hotels: the Fairview Hotel Nairobi, the Best Western Hotel Upper Hill, or the Holiday Inn Nairobi. Simply tag your 1-minute clip at Y254 on X, Facebook, and Instagram for your chance to win. Choose one of these hotels to also tag in your post, and you could spoil your dad for a night at Holiday Inn Nairobi, at Fairview Hotel Nairobi, and at Best Western Upper Hill. Don't forget to use the hashtag MyKBCDad. Let's celebrate our heroes in style.
Say the art without art would just be, get it? We circumnavigate the globe and traverse the local scene to bring you art and culture at their very best. From fine art, culinary art, performing arts, and even cultural events, you name it, and we have got you covered. My name is Kevin Kasioki, and I will be serving you this and much, much more each and every Friday at 8 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1.
Well, it's coming to 11:20 here in Nairobi. Good morning and thank you for joining us. This is Budget Day coverage. I mean, we are doing it from one end to the other. And of course, we just want to dash now to the center of attraction today, and that is the National Assembly, where our reporter Kamze Mecha is on standby to give us an update on what's happening there. Kamche, thank you very much for joining us. What do you want to tell us, or what do you want us to know?
You're O'Brien Kimani, and like you said, yes, indeed, we are coming to you live from Parliament. We are here just to follow up on the day's events. Remember, today is the day that has been set aside for the National Treasury to come to Parliament to be able to do their presentation on the 2025-2026 financial year budget highlights. And you will recall that the particular budget that the government is seeking to spend this next financial year, that is 2025-2026, is about 4.2 trillion that is money that has been, divided into different departments, different ministries, which we call votes, to be able to undertake the projects and also fund some of the projects that the country will be needing to ensure that development as well as governance issues take place without any hitches. But Brian, I do not want to speak a lot on that, but I would like to bring on board one of the members from the National Assembly who have been participating in the budget process from the word go up to this last minute. Recently, or on Tuesday, the National Assembly considered the budget estimates at the Committee of Supply. Karibu sana. The budget, we already know the total that the country is expecting to spend in the next financial year. From where you sit, how do you feel about the votes that have been given out to the different programs?
I think this year the budget is not ambitious. I think they want to raise funds from domestic borrowing, a little from international, and collection of our revenue. Basically, I am in education committee that I have seen they have given about 701 billion. This is because for a country to develop, I think education is the most important sector that this country needs to put a lot of effort. But we realized we did the BPS budget policy statement and put certain amounts to cover various various areas in education. But when we came to budget estimates, some of the monies we put in the BPS were removed. We had to call a meeting again as the Education Committee and also call the Permanent Secretary, the Minister of Education, especially on the budget of invigilation, exam, which was about 5 billion, which was not there. But as of last week, we have been assured and now that the money has now been returned to the budget and the kids will be able to do exams well. And the invigilation, supervision, and exam assessment will be done. So I think in the education sector, now we are covered, except that the capitation for schools still have delays. The remittance from the exchequer to various schools, especially the capitation for high school, junior school, and even the primary school. We had a meeting, I think yesterday also, with the CS of Finance and asked him that they should be releasing capitation to school in time so that the schools don't close down and so that the schools don't have pending bills. We don't need to have schools, colleges having pending bills. But not only schools, we have higher levels of learning, higher institutions of learning where they have scholarships, they have maintenance money. We need that the universities also get their monies on time. The means testing instrument which has been brought on board for the students to be given allocations, we need it to work so that our universities don't go down. As we are talking now, there are quite a number of universities which are not doing well, like Nairobi University, Technical University of Kenya are not doing well, and more universities.
Sorry about that. I mean, the sound there is not really good, and we apologize for that. I mean, it can be blamed on the weather. It's very cold. You realize that it's very, very cold in CBD. But it's warm in here, and that's why we're having a very warm conversation around the budget and what to expect and what we need to do. Because as one of the analysts was talking about here, Leonard Kafafa, that we found ourselves in a hole. And when you find yourself in a hole, number one is to stop digging before you find out, before you figure out how to get out of the hole. And that's what we are doing here, trying to look at the numbers and who is getting what and should they be getting that and who should not get what. I mean, those are the issues that we are discussing here. But before we went for the break, I was talking to Farhia Jama, who is a tax advocate working with Jama and Mombi Advocates. And we also have Leonard Kafafa, who is a policy as well as a governance expert, joining us this morning to help us put these numbers into perspective. Before we went for that break, and of course I also want to alert you that once we have our audio settled out at Parliament, we should be going back to Kamcha Menza for more analysis. Farhia, before we went for the break, I wanted to ask you, I mean, when you look at the 4.2 trillion Kenya shillings budget, the Kenya Revenue Authority, has the Herculean task of raising about 3.3 trillion Kenya shillings. And I was asking you, when you look at the prevailing macroeconomic conditions, do they allow Kenya Revenue Authority to raise such a significant amount of taxes?
Right now, yeah, Kenya Revenue Authority has a really big task, and that challenge, because they have a target to meet and they have to deliver. But then again, now the environment that they want to deliver from is going to be a challenging environment. When the businesses right now are really struggling, and I was mentioning that they are in a survival stage. They're barely meeting their ends meet. You can see businesses are unable to pay their employees. They are unable to pay their own expenses in their businesses. So what does that mean for the Kenya Revenue Authority? It means, one, these businesses are not even able to pay you the taxes that you're looking for. So because some of the businesses were able to, only a few were able to survive, some are shutting down, some are being auctioned, some are coming to court because now they have liabilities that are exceeding their income and revenue streams. So the environment, the business ecosystem right now is really in a turmoil, and there's no cash flowing, or, you know, for a business, for an ecosystem to thrive, there has to be spending, and there has to be people with the capacity to pay for services. So if you're seeing clients are unable to pay for services that they used to pay for before, then their purchasing power is reducing. Then it means for KRA, the revenues that they are looking for will be declining in the long run. So the sustainability aspect might not be in the long term. So it is a short term. They might get the target of 4.2 trillion, but then after that, what happens after that? It means the next financial years they will be struggling.
Leonard, I mean, when you look at KRA and Farhia is talking about these, you know, when you set a target of more than 3.3 trillion for KRA to raise in the prevailing macroeconomic situation, aren't you putting the revenue agency into a very precarious situation?
I think it's quite possible to achieve those targets, essentially using what, essentially tweaking the policies that are in existence at the moment. I'll give you an example. We have VAT. There's been a lot of cleanup of a VAT. And you realize the other day, I think there were headlines the other day to the effect that following a cleanup within KRA itself, VAT collections had been enhanced. And we hope that that cleanup now endures, it's sustainable for, as Fatia has alluded to, long-term revenues, sustainability of long-term revenue collection. Then you have things, other aspects of VAT, you know, like, you know, VAT comes in three forms. There's a standard rating, which is basically 16%. Then there's tax exemption, VAT exemption rather. And that is VAT exempt. That is people, categories of business that have VAT, that don't pay any VAT at all, and they're exempt from VAT. Then there's zero rating, which means companies that can still collect their VAT refunds in terms of the inputs that they've used, but in terms of charging VAT to the customers, the final customers, it's zero. So that cleaning up that confusion between standard rating, between tax exemption and zero rating is going to yield quite a bit of money for KRA, because KRA realizes that there are loopholes that people have exploited to make money off the government or to bleed government revenues. So there are things like that. And then there are incentives that have been given. This year, I think there are more incentives than anything. The incentives, like I think those that have been given to farmers and small businesses, where any inputs, any expense that they incur in terms of equipment, in terms of inputs, is deductible from their tax liability overall. So there are a number of incentives that KRA will play around to ensure that they meet their goal. Yeah.
So the other thing is the fact that, I mean, we've been talking about you know, putting some austerity measures in the way we live as a country. But when I look at, you know, the Budget and Appropriations Committee, they increased the allocation for Parliament by about 13% to about 48 billion shillings. Are they immune to austerity measures as Parliament?
This is a pain point for many Kenyans, by the way. We all feel pained by the fact that the people we elect to represent us end up allocating money to themselves at the expense of other Kenyans. It's not as though other Kenyans don't also want pay rises or don't want to benefit from increases in allowances and that sort of thing. So the optics, in terms of optics, it looks very bad for parliamentarians. But understanding the quintessential parliamentarian, I know that that is a person who is really burdened by, let me use a new phrase, community tax, because the community expects the parliamentarian to be everything for them. He is the one you run to when you have a school fees issue. They're the ones you run to when you have a hospital bill. Yeah, they're the ones that you turn to when the village needs to put up a church and that sort of thing. So there is quite a bit of burden on them, and we are not sufficiently mature as a country to separate the work of the parliamentarian from our personal needs or from community needs. We still haven't gotten to that point where we appreciate that Parliament exists purely and entirely to make laws and nothing more.
It is a legislative body.
Yes, that is it. So we see it as a cash cow.
So when we see, you know, Parliament voting to have its own development kitty, what is it talking about? I want you to respond once we come back, because we need to go to Kisumu so that we can catch up with Wycliffe Okech, who is on standby up there to give us an update on what the people from the lakeside are talking about in terms of the budget. Wycliffe, I can see you in Kisumu City Center. What do you want to tell us?
Well, thank you so much, O'Brien. Back in Nairobi, we are coming to you live from one of the streets from the lakeside. This is a day that Kenyans have been waiting so eagerly. They want to know that the Cabinet Secretary, what the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, that is John Badi, has in that famous briefcase within the day, that is in the afternoon, when he will be making his to the give the country's financial framework for the financial year 2025-2026. And of course, just like on what that brief, that's not governance issues, of course, and these estimates, in as much as the Cabinet Secretary will be laying them bare to us this day, they have been with us for quite some time now, and we basically have a rough idea of what the estimates look like. And Alfayo, if you just move here and look into the camera, as a resident of Kisumu, what do you make of the budget this year? What do you expect to see when CS John Badi makes his way to the Parliament? What is your major expectation this day?
Thank you very much. My name is Ngoro Alfayo. I'm quite privileged to be here with you people today. Of course, we know what is in the budget that our Cabinet Secretary for Finance, Badi, is going to table in Parliament today. I want to say that today's budget is 4.2 trillion. That is a slight improvement as compared to the last year, which was 3.6 trillion. Definitely, we know as much as we have the 4.2 trillion, we need accountability on this fund. The reason as to why the budget is there within the government is mostly to focus on education, is mostly to focus on economic empowerment, is mostly to focus on infrastructure, is mostly to focus on our roads, which are basically also the infrastructure I'm talking about. It also has to talk about the agriculture sector. It talks about so many things that needs to empower the common mwananchi. Yes.
This region is known for, is majorly inhabited by the fishing community. And also on the other side, rice farming, cane farming are quite big in this region. What aspects of agriculture would you want to see this budgeting dwelling much on?
Thank you so much. Me, definitely, I come from Kisumu County, whereby we have agriculture as economic activity. We have fishing also as an economic activity. We want the government definitely mostly to dwell on the sugar factories. We've been having challenges with the sugar factories in Nyanza, not necessarily in Nyanza, but the entire country. You find the government has privatized, initially they privatized these sugar factories, but so far they have leased it. We wanted a situation whereby when we have funds, we would love to request the government to allocate funds to the government, to the sugar industry, so that they themselves, they manage the sugar industries and not to be leased to the individuals. Because once it is leased to the individuals has got the interest. And the interest is them to make profit and not to empower the common mwananchi. You will find that all these workers that are working in the sugar industries, they will be underpaid. Their welfare will not be looked into. Mostly they'll be serving the interest of the employer and not the employee. Thank you so much. And secondly, about the fishing industry, we love the budget to cater for the building of the fishing hubs in the lake region. That will foster the employment within this region to our youth and also to empower the economic of the area.
All right, Alfai, just hold it right there, because as we talk about the budget, I'm told that the president is currently having a function in Mombasa. And on this note, I would want to take our viewers right there to listen into what the president has to say regarding the function that is underway in Mombasa. But hold it right there, Alfai, because we'll be back to you to pick your view regarding the budget later on. But on this note, to the viewers, let me take you straight to Mombasa for that function where the president is currently addressing.
Of transnational organized crime continues to grow in scale and complexity. Crimes such as money laundering, terrorism, and terrorism financing, including human trafficking, pose serious and escalating risks to our countries, our regions, and to the global community. The perpetrators of these crimes operate under borders, across borders, moving people, goods, and illicit money through shadowy networks, whether by smuggling narcotics between nations or trafficking vulnerable individuals across continents and laundering dirty money through intricate offshore systems. We therefore need greater vigilance, more robust partnerships, and integrated international responses to identify, investigate, and prosecute those behind these crimes. It is through such collaboration between national, regional, and international agencies that we can effectively disrupt and neutralize these threats and blunt their negative impacts. To underscore the gravity of this challenge, allow me to briefly reflect on Kenya's experience in this space. Terrorism, one of the most dangerous forms of transnational organized crime, continues to pose a persistent and evolving threat to our nation and region. Kenya has endured several devastating attacks, including the 1998 United States Embassy bombing in Nairobi, the 2013 Westgate Mall siege, as well as the 2015 Garissa University and the 2019 Dusit II complex attacks. However, through heightened vigilance, enhanced intelligence, and strengthened international cooperation, Kenya has made notable progress in bringing perpetrators to justice. Just last month, 2 individuals were found guilty of aiding the Dusit II attackers, and sentencing is scheduled for June 19th this year. In the Garissa University case, the courts in 2019 found 3 individuals culpable and were sentenced to life imprisonment and 41 years each. Currently, 24 terrorism-related cases remain active before our courts, the majority involving membership in international terrorist organizations. These efforts have not only led, but have also significantly suppressed such attacks and contribute to enhanced national security. In addition, a total of 720 cases involving trafficking in children and other persons, unlawful acquisition of travel documents, fraud and misrepresentation, facilitating illegal entry into or exit from countries, interfering with travel documents and personal effects, and trafficking in persons for purposes of organized crime were reported between 2021 and 2024. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has also registered 30 money laundering cases in the last 3 years. An in-depth analysis of these cases show that the perpetrators and criminal networks operate across multiple jurisdictions and have a presence on social media platforms. In addition, financing, facilitation, and commission are transboundary in nature. For instance, during the Dusit terrorism attack, financing was traced to banks in South Africa, various banks within Kenya, and Somalia. Furthermore, criminal networks have evolved their modus operandi. In human trafficking cases, often terrorists pose as victims to facilitate the movement across borders. They also operate through sophisticated, encrypted social media platforms and increasingly use cryptocurrency to finance their activities. These cases underscore the scale and complexity of the threat we face and the urgency of sustained and coordinated action. Therefore, the theme of this conference, Building Partnerships, a united front against transnational organized crimes, could not be more timely. It reflects the critical need for prosecutorial agencies to develop regional and international mechanisms to collaboratively address emerging threats. No single agency or country can confront these complex crimes in isolation. Through the exchange of knowledge and best practice, we are better able to understand the legal nuances across jurisdictions and craft innovative approaches for effective investigations and prosecutions. Mutual legal assistance and extradition remain vital pillars of this effort. They provide formal pathways for cross-border information sharing. Joint investigations allow for real-time collaboration and pooled expertise, enabling us to dismantle criminal networks more effectively. I am aware that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions in Kenya has signed MOUs with various prosecutorial agencies, including Azerbaijan, Morocco, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. These partnerships are instrumental in enhancing collaboration on matters relating to terrorism and terrorism financing, transnational organized crime, and in building the capacity of prosecutors to respond more effectively to these complex threats. We must also work towards the harmonization of legal frameworks, align national laws across jurisdictions is essential to building a truly global front against transnational organized crime. Equally important is the vigorous pursuit of asset tracing, confiscation, and forfeiture. Denying criminal enterprises the proceeds of their illicit activities is key to undermining their operations. I challenge the heads of prosecution agencies here to give priority to this particular endeavor. On our part, Kenya is committed to enhancing the resources and capacity of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to lead these efforts both regionally and internationally. Importantly, the revamping of our anti-money laundering and asset forfeiture framework is a testament to our commitment. It reflects our pursuit of greater specialization, stronger institutions, and high-quality investigations. The government of Kenya remains committed to upholding the rule of law and advancing a human rights-centered approach to prosecution and pursuit of justice. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference has offered a valuable platform to share experiences, learn from one another, and explore innovative solutions to the emerging threats facing our countries. I look forward to the recommendations from this gathering and assure you of the Government of Kenya's full support in funding and empowering the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution.
Well, that is President William Ruto addressing members of or delegates attending the 23rd Commonwealth Heads of Prosecuting Agencies who are meeting there to have a look at the state of prosecuting. And of course, once we get a stable link, we should be going back there. But we are back in studio here just to have a conversation around the upcoming budget speech, which is coming up for reading today at around 3 p.m. Inside the National Assembly. And of course, our reporters are there to of course help us get a feeling of what is happening here. So we're also keeping an eye on different areas of the city, and of course we want to go back to the county of Kisumu, where our reporter Wycliffe Okech is catching up with the people from the lakeside city of Kisumu just to get a glimpse of what they are talking about. Wycliffe, if you can hear me, what's up?
Well, thank you so much, Brian. Before we went to Mombasa for that function by the president, I was engaging one of the residents here in Kisumu regarding the budget that the Cabinet Secretary, C.S. Mbadi, will be presenting to the nation through the National Assembly, of course. And Alfayo, before we took this very short break to Mombasa, we were talking about the place of the fisherfolk and also those engaging in farming in Kisumu regarding sugarcane and also rice. Do you feel they have a place within this budget? Because in one of the town halls that the CS has been holding with the citizens in the country, he's been saying that this budget is a common man's budget. Do you believe so?
Entirely, that one depends with the CS finance, because his mandate is to allocate funds for the development of our regions. So far as we speak, I was talking about the fishing hubs that we have in Nyanza region. That is an economic activity that we are having. But at the moment, we don't have factories for the coolants of our fish from those who are fishing from the lake. Then we are headed nowhere economically in terms of the empowerment of our youth, in terms of the economic upgrading. Yes.
Like I mentioned it, the CS has been quite synonymous mentioning this budget to be common man's budget, and this is orchestrated by the fact that there are no new taxes that have been introduced in this finance bill. From where you sit as a resident of Kisumu, do you believe this?
Not really. Allow me say this. The government they have a misplaced priority. For example, badala waweke pesa kwa mahospitali zetu, hao wanachukua pesa, wanaweka pesa kwa maneno ya mtandao, like allocating 2.5 billion shillings to the social media industries. We have government agencies that are to take care of that. It's not the government to allocate money for those people to trace our people, to kill our people, to maim our people.
I'm not sure.
That is the misplaced priority that we are facing with the government.
Yeah, sorry, it may be a misplaced priority, but then I wouldn't think this is the motive behind allocating money to the DCI for monitoring this social media. I don't think it's for to track and maim people. But then again, this budget, you see that in the allocations, the estimates that we have seen so far is that education takes the largest chunk. Are we getting right?
Yes, it takes the largest chunk. That is 700 million that is allocated to the education.
Billion.
And allow me say this, sir. When it comes to the education, that was the number one policy agendas for the Kenya Kwanza government. Free primary and secondary education. The university model funding. Those are the issues that the government needs to tackle. For example, when you look at the capitation in our secondary schools, it was reduced, meaning we are not going to get free primary education. This is the area where the president and the budget chairman, CS, needs to focus mostly on. So I would love to tell the president that let the capitation for our national, for the education sector be increased so that our children goes to school without paying anything.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Alfayo. Thank you so much. Well, O'Brien, that is one of the residents of the lakeside city of Kisumu here, who has been quite, is well conversant with governance issues, of course, and you've heard me mention that issues relating to agriculture and the fishing community need actually to be integrated into that particular budget, because remember, this is a regime that was elected on the back of pledges to uplift the Wanjiku, the Onyangos, the common Wananchi. At that time, they were termed Mama Bogas and the people, the border people. And of course, that is what he's saying, that the budget should be primed on that very basis. Well, this is not the end. I know this is an engagement that is going to continue throughout the day. But for this, on this note, I would like to hand it back to you in studio for the rest of the coverage of this particular issue. O'Brien.
Well, thank you very much. Wycliffe Okech, in the sunny lakeside city of Kisumu. I mean, it's look all beautiful. We're back in Nairobi. The temperatures are 21 degrees. It's freezing here. But we're in studio. We are talking about money and the management of money. I'm in studio with two guests. And of course, with time coming to 11:51, we should be winding up shortly. But not before we have the final say. And in studio, I have Farhia Jama. She works for Farhia, for Jama and Mombi. She's a tax advocate. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, on my left, we have Leonard Kafafa, a policy and governance expert. I mean, before we wind up this conversation, I want to hear from you, Leonard. I mean, when you see John Bandi, going or starting before the country to read his speech, what are your expectations from this man?
This is unlike past times where the budget was a surprise. On the day of the budget reading is what you got to know what the minister and his team had planned out for the country. This has been a process. This process started, I think, last year. I think budget processing this day, the budget process actually in Kenya starts at the end of August, spilling into September. By law, that's how it is these days, quite unlike past times. And there's a lot of input from multiple stakeholders, and there's avenue for public participation as well, unlike, again, past times. So there's not too much of a surprise. I think there's been back and forth, there's been a lot of discussion. Various stakeholders have made their input, they've given their input, and I think what we expect is basically what has been already outlined, and most of us have on our phones, on our tablets, on our computers. It's in the public domain. So no surprises. I don't expect surprises. Yeah.
But what do you expect? Are you expecting him to tell people anything that they don't know or they haven't heard about?
Not really. I just know that this is a departure from last year's budget, where a lot of effort was directed towards raising taxes, with of course the backlash that we saw last year. I think this year has been more of incentives, more of looking at other avenues of raising funds. I mean, some of the things that we've not captured in this conversation is the proposal for to bridge the budget deficit by selling off some of the country's state corporations. We're talking of Safaricom. I think the government wants to minimize some of its shareholding in Safaricom. We are talking of Kenya Pipeline Corporation, lucrative state corporations that can be sold off to the public or to whoever, and that can help in bridging the budget deficit. Yeah.
What about you, Farhia?
I think John Badi has a chip on his shoulder, because he has as much as this information is already in public, we're already aware of it, we have deviated from what had happened last year. And so there's so much expectations from the citizens as to what he's going to say. Whatever he's going to say, even while reading that budget, will either lead to so many citizens who are watching and waiting anxiously for this, to either agree to go on with how this budget is being read, or you know, you never know what the citizens' view might be on this budget. But then again, he has a lot of work to prove as to why they need to raise this 4.2 trillion and explain what exactly they're doing and how they're going to go about this budget. Yeah. So that's the challenge he has, and let's see the citizens how they're going to take this message home. That's the challenge we are all waiting to hear. Yeah.
And this is going to be John Bandi's maiden budget speech in Parliament. I mean, the last budget speech was done by the former CS for National Treasury, Professor Njogon Ndongo. Now we have Mbadi. What do you want him to say to assuage, a nation that is reeling from a very high cost of living? And this has been caused by many factors, including external factors like the war between Russia and Ukraine, the war between Israel and Palestine. What message would you expect him to carry on board to assuage Kenyans?
At this point, I don't see anything further that he can do to possibly assuage any feelings of discontentment, because he has already done it. He was in Bunge la Wananchi way before the budget, during the budget making process. Sat down with Wananchi, talked to them, explained to them, took in their views. He's been on multiple television shows talking about the same budget, taking in views. He's been panelist, I think, in multiple shows. I think he's unprecedented in terms of stakeholder engagement. No other CS before him, nor other minister in the previous dispensation before him has done as much as John Mbadi has done. To talk to citizens, not talk at citizens as has been in the past. He's talked to citizens, and a lot of the views that he's received from them have been incorporated in his budget. Yeah.
And now going forward, today finally the budget, he's going to read his speech. What is going to happen on the 1st of July 2026?
I think once he's read this, this finance bill will come to become effective on the 1st of July. And so then now that means now this will be part and parcel of your life, because now we have an obligation to raise 4.2 trillion. So it's not a government job, it's all our jobs. So it's you waking up every morning and now looking for that money to pay on those taxes. And then also it means that there needs to be something to be, basically the strategies that everyone needs to think about. The way my colleague has mentioned, this is the first time in years, finance bill never used to be a discussion as it is today. But this time the citizens are more informed, more aware, and you can see even the treasurer, before he used to be on the other side of the coin where he used to criticize the people who used to read the budget, but now he's on the spot and he's on that chair where he has to do this, and he has engaged, he's done his part, he's called the young people, he's called the Gen Zs, he's indulged people. But then again, are we going to meet our targets? That's what is at stake. And then if we don't meet our targets, because right now he's also focusing on internal borrowing, yeah, and not more on external borrowing. So he's introducing a new strategy of paying for the fiscal deficit. So what is the need for the country? So there has to be a beneficial return of investment in terms of internal borrowing. Are people going, do people have that money to give the government so that now it can run its affairs here?
Very good. Let's dash back to the outside Treasury, where Alan Aoko is talking to members of Parliament, and get to listen from them, and then we come back.
Yes, thank you very much for that interjection, O'Brien. We are still outside the National Treasury, and activities are still ongoing to prepare the scene for what is culminating into the budget reading at the end of the afternoon. You know, this budget is an interesting one, and there's no other better person to talk about the constituency feeling and what it means to the people, especially if they come from the western part of the country. With me here, we have a honorable member, MP for Matungu, MP Oscar Nabulindo, just to give us his opinion on the budget and the processes that has gone into this budget. Karibu sana, Honorable. Maybe from where you sit, talk to us about what you've seen in this budget. What stands out for you?
Asante sana. What is standing out for me in this budget is it's one of the biggest, largest budget that Kenya has ever processed, that the Parliament has ever processed. We are talking an amount of 4.2 trillion Kenya shillings. That this is a budget that Kenya has ever experienced before. And the most important thing in this budget is that we want to close the gap. We reduce borrowing. I can see Waziri has put at 2.7 trillion shillings. That is what we are able to raise domestically. And when that means we have a deficit of almost 900 billion or 1 trillion. It means we have to borrow either externally or internally to make sure to be able to fulfill this budget. And another thing that I am seeing in this budget is that I'm expecting the minister to read out measures of how he is going to reduce taxation and reduce the burden on Kenyans. You remember the reason why Kenyans went on the streets last year because of the finance bill was because of high taxation. So I'm not expecting the minister to repeat the same mistake where taxation is very high and Kenyans are going to on the streets again. We want a budget which takes care of mwananchi's maslahi, because as we speak, people are struggling. The prices of commodities are very high. The fuel is very high. So we are expecting the minister should come out and tell Kenyans that I have taken this measure to reduce the cost of living for Kenyans. And when it comes to the people who are employed, pay is very high. People are saying pay is very high. Me as a member of parliament, my pay is almost 400,000. Some people say members of parliament don't pay tax. We do pay tax. Our families pay tax. So when the pay is at 18%, hiyo inaumiza watu. We are suffering as the people who earn from the exchequer. And I'm also expecting that the government will not take 70% of this money that is collected and borrowed for expenditure of paying salaries. That means recurrent expenditure. The biggest undoing of this country is that 70%, over 60 to 70% of the income that the government generates actually goes to recurrent expenditure. Tunaokota pesa kulipa mishahara. Tunaokota pesa kununua gazeti kwa ofisi. We want this government to come up with the measures to curb wastage and reduce recurrent expenditure and put more money in development expenditure.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. We also don't want to take so much of your time. We understand you are going for a committee meeting.
Yes.
Best of wishes as we continue to learn more about this budget and to your work in that committee.
Thank you
very much, Honorable Oscar Nabulindo. Thank you so much. Yes, there you go, Brian. As we continue seeking the opinion of Kenyans here, please don't forget to come back to us, Mr. O'Brien, because we have a lot to talk about here on the street, telling you about what Kenyans feel about the budget and what they expect from this budget going forward. Back to you, Brian.
I can guarantee you, I've had you. We'll keep you busy the whole day. So y'all better get ready at the National Treasury. That is Alan Aoko, talking to Oscar Nabulindo, who is a member of Parliament. And of course, now time to wrap it up and hand over the mantle to Kasichana Masha for Kurunzi Mashinani. And before we do that, I just want to give you each a minute so that we can hear your final thoughts before we break for lunch. Yes, and I'll start with, let's start with you.
Okay. This budget making process has been very inclusive this time. I think a lot of input has been taken in from the public and other stakeholders. And we just need to give John Buddy the chance to raise these revenues for this next financial year for the betterment of our country. It must not be lost on us, on we Kenyans, that tax payment is an obligation on the part of every citizen. It's a civic duty. So let's give him time and let's not be too much in a hurry to protest.
Very good.
Yeah.
I still remember the old tagline that was introduced, I think it was in 2005, tulipe ushuru tujitegemee. It was a clarion call by the government back then. Yes, Farhia.
So as a country, the pivotal moment for us is how do we balance our books without breaking the taxpayers' back? But then again, there are two things we can never run away, as Leonard has mentioned, death and taxes. So if we want to survive as a country and develop, then now taxes is part of our life. But then again, now we need to find a way that we are not affecting the taxpayer. So the taxpayer is always the cash cow. As much as we are trying to balance our book and get ourselves back from all these debts, what better decisions can the government do so that it can gain the trust back of the citizens? Right now, it's not about how much deficit or how much debt, is the fact that the government lost the trust of the taxpayer. What value are you giving back to this taxpayer? Yes, you've collected 4.2 trillion. What have you done for the common mwananchi? So that has to be in the back of our mind.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I think at that point we can call it a morning and afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. And of course, for always responding to our clarion call to come and talk to our people.
Yes.
The time is highly valued and appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Very good. I mean, we've been here since 10, of course, talking about money and the management of money. And I just want to wrap it up with what Farhia has said, and of course with Kafafa. You know, two things you can run away from, and one of them is taxes. As long as you are living, just know that you're going to pay your taxes. That's right. And the other one is death. Let's not talk about death. Taxes. You must pay your taxes. And I just want us to go back to what the government, there was a clarion call that tulipe ushuru tujitegemee. If we need to grow, if we have to grow, if we have to move to the next level of development as a country, we must pay our taxes. And then once we pay our taxes, we must ask ourselves, how are we spending our taxes? Are we putting our taxes in the right places? Because we need good schools, we need good hospitals, we need our security apparatus to be updated. And of course, we need good roads. O'Brien Kimani is my name. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. You have been watching Bees Check. And coming up next is Kasichana Masha with Kurunzi Mashinani. And that is not before we go to Parliament to listen to the committee that is probing the death of Mr. Ojwang. Thank you for joining us. Asante sana.
From the power source.
So all that is subject to that investigation that is currently ongoing. The question by Honorable Losabuyu on do you think DIG KBS should step aside to allow for investigations?
The urgency of sending these officers to go to Migori, Homa Bay, was it discussed before rushing to arrest? I think I asked the question.
Honorable Chair, there was actually no special urgency in terms of the investigations of this matter. Like I said, there was no preferential treatment accorded to the complainant whatsoever. This was a complaint raised. It was a complaint touching on the integrity of a person none other than the Deputy Inspector General, KBC, Kenya Police Service. So there was no special urgency where we feel that...
Maybe this year, while you're on that point, was this complaint raised verbally or it was a written complaint that we should actually have before us to actually confirm for ourselves that as a Kenyan he had the right to complain, but it must be there for you to take all that action which you have tried to explain to us.
It was a written complaint, Honorable Chair, which at the end of this session we'll be glad to share with the committee. Otherwise, in our service standing orders, unlike all other cases, we always emphasize on the need to expedite our investigations. And that is part of our performance contract, that we urge our officers to make sure that all cases reported must, in as much as possible, be expedited. But like I said, we did not accord the matter of DIG Lagat any special preference. As regards what I mentioned, Honorable Chair, the letter from the medical officer Mbagathi County Hospital, we received the letter dated 8th of June 2025. Name Albert Ojwang Omondi, gender male. The above named patient brought in by policemen from Central Police Station at about 2 a.m. On examination, he was unresponsive, no spontaneous breathing, no cardiac activity. The entire body was cold, face swollen, multiple bruises, scalp cut on the parieto-occipital region, and had bruises on the limbs. The patient brought in dead, notification of death form, field policemen advised to go to Kenyatta National Hospital Police Station and to City Mortuary thereafter. Shah Mitali, Medical Officer, Mbagathi County Hospital. Thank you.
The letter. So members, the three questions you from LHA, it was actually one question. I actually did ask even personally also whether this patient was really picked up on Friday or Saturday, because what the father said is totally opposite of what the police reported. Saturday or Friday?
The occurrence book, Honorable Chair, where we entered the arrest of Albert Ojwang at the Mawego Police Station, and when he was transported from Mawego to Central Police Station, we have all the relevant occurrence book and we shall provide the extracts. Thank you.
Chair, I think one of my questions has not been answered. I asked him if the officer manning the report office desk, the name of the officer who is said to have reported in the morning about Albert, if it was the same PC Mohammed Rashid Hilo or it was a different officer. And then another question, the reason as to why I was asking why the officers who have been suspended is because yesterday at the Senate, DCI Amin said that CI Talam was a suspect. So I wanted actually to know if indeed they are somewhere in the investigation and they are already having leads on who could be involved, or it was because they wanted non-interference from the officers of the station.
Chair, also on the omission. Respond. Hold on, Masara. Straightforward, either Min or IG. Question?
I can maybe attempt to why I said that the OCS is the principal suspect, Honorable Chair. The allegation of the deceased Albert banging his head on the wall came from Central Police Station, and he is the officer commanding Central Police Station. Why would an officer coin such a narrative? That's why I said, whatever utterances the OCS Talam is making, we should treat them with a pinch of salt. I've not said that he's an accused person, but we should treat him as a suspect, because why would somebody coin that allegation? Thank you.
Chair. And of course, I think that is also in line with the act and the role and the powers of the OCS. I mean, the act put a lot of responsibility and power on the OCS in regards to suspects or any person presented to the cells. Chair. Is entirely responsible. Chair. So we are going to take the other round.
No, my question
the IG was just about to respond to my question about the
order,
DIG.
Chair. A point of order, Chair. Chair, we are stuck on
order. That's what I've been asking for order.
We are stuck on 4 questions asked by 4 members, or questions asked by 4 members for all this time, and time is running out. When are we going to get chances also to inquire? And some of the questions are really opinion questions, which would rather be asked to the right people.
The IG was just about to answer my question before you started.
Okay, answer on the question of Buirosa, but hold please. Yes, and then Kangara, then we take the last round, starting from our colleagues.
As not,
you talked about the sequence of time.
The 4th, at what time did the IG complain to DCI? At what time did they form the committee? At what time did they write to come and took a statement from DIG? And then at what time the report to CAK?
They have promised to supply us with a sequence recorded. I think that's what you said, if I got you right.
Honorable Chair, in our investigations...
And in dates or gaps, it will be up to us now to make a ruling and observation on that one. So it's not a big deal. I think that's what you said.
That's what I said, Honorable Chair. Thank you so much.
You are going to have your moment, based on what is provided, to make observation and recommendation. Any gaps, then of course we'll also have opinion. You'll make an opinion on the same. So before we give you Kangara, then what about respond to what Buirosa is asking?
There are 2 questions from Honorable Lusabuyu. Number 1, the reason why the people of Kenya should believe that what we are telling this committee
is believable. Let me start by saying that, as I did say yesterday, the primary information that we got that early morning of Sunday is that the late Ojwang had hit his head on the walls. And based on that, the first statement was issued based on that information. And it is for that reason the DCI have stated very clearly, why is it that this OCS prepares and dispatches such an information? What was his interests? So it is on that basis that the DCI has mentioned. And on my part, and on behalf of the National Police Service, and to the people of Kenya, yesterday I said, I'm very sorry for that initial information that was provided to the people of Kenya. I still remain sorry, and the National Police Service remains sorry for that. That is our position. Number two, this is about the DAG stepping aside to allow for investigations. Only this one. There is an ongoing investigation by APO. And in these investigations, every person whose name will be mentioned is to have played any role that led to the death of the late Albert Ojwang must record his statement, must show his side. And it is on that basis, I believe, if the DIG is going to be mentioned, then definitely we will write the statements, and I believe it's on that basis that now he can be able to step aside to allow for that completion of that investigation. My submission, Honorable Chair.
Kangara's question? Did you ask a question? Okay, just before you do, I think kindly members, it's already a 1:15 midday, and we still have our power. And I'd mentioned that we need to at least have a bit of report ready to be tabled in the House. So let's have another round, starting from the Senior Counsel, Kaluma. We go to Kangara, and our brother, who I think, did you introduce yourself even? Okelo.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, my name is Jared Okelo, Member of Parliament for Nyando constituency. I am here as a friend of the committee who asked on behalf of the Kabondo Kasipul Member of Parliament the questions that have necessitated the presence of the officers here. I thank you.
Na mtazamaji, ni furaha yangu kuungana nawe siku ya leo kwenye habari zetu ama kwenye kitengo chetu cha Kurunzi na Tamrini. Kasichana Masha ndio jina langu, na siku ya leo mtazamaji, macho yote yako katika Wizara ya Fedha, ambapo tunatarajia waziri wa fedha John Mbadi muda wote majira ya mchana kuanzia mwendo wa saa 8 hapo kuweza kutusomea makadirio ya bajeti ya mwaka 2025-2026. Na sasa hivi mtazamaji, naarifiwa kwamba wanahabari wenza Gladys Mungai na Kamche Menza